Okay, well, in that case, casting. Let's get into the casting stuff, I
Let's
guess.
get into the casting.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, the stuff I'm curious about with casting directors, I'm coming at it from a actor's point of view, obviously, and for actors, it's like they're these people that send you an email about an audition and they give you a chance and they take it away and it comes and it goes and and then they call you back for a recall, but that gets cancelled. Can you send the self tape instead? So I'm like, let's see from like it must be wild being in a casting office. Like it has to be because I was watching the obviously the Call My Agent, the French version, and I'm like, okay, it's comedy,
and
but
that. I mean, I've not even watched the British version, but why they would remake it, I don't understand because people are lazy and don't want to read subtitles. I don't know, but that's immense. That's one of my favorite shows of like the last few years. I love that show.
yeah, but the thing with watching it, I was like, yeah, it's comedy, it's slightly heightened, but I'm like, oh, okay, you're part of the same rat race. You're literally trying to deal with the same madness, and I mean, there's a number of stuff. I mean, obviously, being an immigrant, there must be castings that you look at and you just roll your eyes in the back of your head, like, what is this? Like, do you have a different perspective as opposed to someone who's from the UK looking at casting types like, ugh, I don't know about that one.
I mean, yes. I also think there's not. I feel like. I mean, I work with Emily Tillelly, so I'm at her office. So I'm a casting director, but we work together, and I'm a part of ET. So she's Australian. She's not British, same as me. I have another friend who's a casting director who's Spanish, and then I don't know anyone else who's not British. Everyone else I know is very much from this country, born and bred. This is going to sound potentially, you know, iffy for me to say this, but I also feel like with casting directors and with agents, people are predominantly middle class.
Right.
There's now this kind of big push because I'm on the board of the CDA and I'm also a probation member with the CDG, and there's kind of this genuine push to open casting up to people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, people who have families who have nothing to do with the industry, who don't come from that world in the slightest, who wouldn't necessarily think of, being a casting director is a career for them, and opening it up to those people, same as there's been a very strong push in terms of inclusivity and again opening it up to people of different heritage, because then that means that people you're seeing on screen are not what they used to be 20 years ago, all British, all white, all the
So you
same.
don't have John Wayne playing Genghis Khan.
Yeah, like you need different people from different countries, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different heritage, people who all look different, to be in those rooms behind those computer screens making those decisions so that what you see on screen is representative of the society that we all live in.
And
That's the only way.
like to
But I
be fair,
still
a lot of
think,
it's the networking. It's just you bring in people that you know. If you're middle class, chances are you'll know other middle class people, and they'll be amazed going to the same universities.
yeah, which is kind of, I think, what we're very much at the moment trying to to work on and to change. And there's like lots of different internships, and they've started that casting diploma at National Film and Television School, which is really cool. There's steps being made. Obviously, like any change, it takes time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think everyone I worked with so far. So I was with Kate and Lou for a few years, and then I've been with Emily for a few years now as well. And then I've done some bits in between by myself. I think when you work with other casting directors and you're in other casting offices, I think you kind of find each other, or at least that's been my experience, based on the type of things that you're into. So we're not going to, between ourselves, we're not going to vary that much in terms of, I will really like a particular actor and their performance, and then my colleague would be like, no, what are you talking about? We kind of tend to be more or less on the same page. So
Right.
I don't know whether not being British, although I am technically, but my husband and I say that we're fake British. We've got citizenships and passports, but like there's not a drop of British blood in us. I don't know whether that makes a difference, but obviously a lot of it is just, when it comes to casting, a lot of it is based on your personal taste
Yeah.
and just your kind of feeling. And you can't really, you actually can't teach someone how to do it. It's something that you kind of like acquire over the years of doing. You kind of develop your eye and, you know, this feeling of what you believe is a good, believable, strong performance, and how that fits in with the rest of the script and the story that's being told, etc., etc. And I always say to people, you know, you put 5 casting directors in a room, you give them the same brief, you'll end up with 5 different ensembles of actors, completely different, who will all do a great thing, but they'll all be very different.
Yeah.
They'll be doing a different thing because, you know, we all bring our own life experience and history and opinions and things that we watched in the past and what we liked. And, you know, it's that thing, what was the expression, you should never discuss tastes, because it's just, you know, there's no right or wrong, it's just all very different because we're all very unique. So yeah, I mean, we used to sometimes in the past, because we do a lot of commercials, there'd be very kind of silly things written in the casting brief coming occasionally from production company or an ad agency, or, you know, wanting something that's so kind of arbitrary that you're like, well, that's not, you know. And often with brands, especially in the past, I think everyone is just, you know, more up to speed now with it, just genuinely, you know, not focusing so much on people needing to look a certain way, or, you know, there's been a genuine push for, you know, not only beautiful looking people on the screen, because that's not anyone's reality. um but yeah, I think that's all changed. But in the past, we'd get like a ridiculous request, or like a very, you know, like a, oh, I'm not going to put that out on Spotlight Breakdown, you know. um but not
Handsome in a
necessarily.
non-traditional way, but there's always like somehow they're handsome or good looking.
Yeah, so it's kind of more of that. And I think, I don't even know what the question was
Well, it
anymore.
was
Can
just more like
you?
if there's been like a wild casting brief where you're like, oof, like I don't know how to put this in polite society, as you said on Spotlight.
I mean, there's a lot of that, and I think people who, you know, clients who approach you who have experience with casting directors, you know, that brief will already come, you know, kind of ready made, and we can just
Yeah.
share it pretty much and just do a copy paste. You know, when people haven't had experience of working with casting directors, that they don't really know kind of how to necessarily phrase things, and then we just rewrite it.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Fair enough.
and also, we know sometimes what they mean, even though they've not said it or they've said it badly. We know what they're referring to.
Yeah, if you've seen the
And
previous projects and such.
yeah, and then we'll just know kind of how to word it so that agents get it. And also to, you know, be considerate of everyone and not be, you know, appearing exclusive. And it's because it's not, you know, often actors ask like, oh, you know, do you have an agents list, and, you know, which agents do you work with and stuff. And I think, I mean, on occasion, you know, we'll have like a select list, but that's only because we have a very small budget on something, and we just know that the likes of, you know, bigger agencies are not gonna even look at it. So
All right.
it just doesn't go to them in that sense. But everything else, we always put it out to all agents, because that's our job, you know, to open it up to everyone, and then for us to make that filter of who we think are the, you know, best 10, 15 options for that character, that we would then get into the room or get a tape from, and then go from there. I think kind of pre-selecting and picking and choosing, and which agencies and, you know, people who've, you know, have X, Y, Z experience, I think it's limiting, and I think it's a shame. We don't, granted, you know, on commercials, we don't open it up to actors directly, but that's purely because already the volume of suggestions from agents is so vast.
Yeah. So
You know,
like
if I was to tell
realistically
you,
for one role, like what are we looking at numbers wise?
but like,
We're looking at thousands. potentially
Overall,
hundreds.
it'll be thousands on a whole commercial if it's multiple characters. But like at a minimum, for a commercial, that's paying your kind of equity minimums, at least 600 options.
Yeah.
Give it
Over.
in that like age range, say 25 to 35. It's like you're just drowning in suggestions, and we genuinely look at everyone and we go through stuff and we really give it the time. So then if we were to open it up to actors
Yeah.
as well, then that triples the work. When it goes directly to actors is if we are if we're looking
FMR,
something
sorry.
very specific and very niche, or if we're working on a short film and we kind of have the time and the freedom to genuinely open it up to everyone and see lots and lots and lots of people, in those kind of instances. But yeah, there's so many actors out there, so many brilliant actors out there, that I don't know how any of you get up in the morning and do what you do, because it's very tough and very stressful, and you're kind of having to think like, how do I make myself stand out? How do I, how do
I
and
mean, I'm
it's
still
not.
stuck on the 600 because in my head there's 600 headshots that you have to go through, and oh, that must be fun.
At a minimum, like I can literally look at, let me see, this is not going to be the best example, this last one, because but I'll give you, okay, so there's a commercial that we're casting at the moment. It's just one character.
Right?
2,103 suggestions for one role.
One row. Good.
2,103 plus agents who will email you directly, plus sometimes you on commercials you have model agents who you're
Okay, so
not necessarily on the spotlight, but they kind of get their briefs and stuff, and they send their packages as well.
they want to get
There's
there sort of into that
Yeah,
as well. Right.
there's so many. So yeah,
It is a numbers game. Fair enough. I
yeah.
mean,
I mean, yeah. Go on. Sorry.
and that's okay. It just that kind of rolled into the other question of like, how do you casting directors deal with the mental health aspect of it? And like, I was thinking, how do you handle rejection? Because I knew I was getting ready for this interview, so I was like, let me think about the day in the life of, and you basically get your little ragtag group of candidates and you present them, and then they get shot down, and then this one gets to that stage and they get shot down there. So it's like a little battle that's happening in front of you. Like, oh come on, you can make it.
I mean, I think often what actors forget or maybe are not aware of,
Mm.
obviously, we get the brief, we get the script, we get the project. We're not, a part of that process of putting it together in the slightest. I mean, the thing
Yeah,
that we have freedom with is our brief and how best to communicate what we need to agents or to actors who's going direct. On occasion, we'll say stuff like, and this is not a commercial project, let's be honest, but on a film, a short film, we can nudge things along. So, for example, I'm working on a feature film, it's in development at the moment, and I've kind of asked if perhaps one of the characters could be female, just because I kind of felt that the balance wasn't all there. We were kind of quite male heavy with two male protagonists. And I thought, well, this particular character can literally be male or female. There's no,
not relevant to the story.
that's not relevant at all. So we can do those kind of, suggestions, let's say. And then we present our options. So say, on a commercial, usually it'll be something like between 12 to 15 per role. And for us, people we're presenting, whether it's a tape or you come into the studio, is we want all of you to be amazing. So that when the client gets the link, they're like, oh, who do we choose? We don't know. They're all great. That's our ideal scenario. And I think anyone who's ever had a bad experience with a casting director, I just find it so difficult to believe, because obviously it's in our best interest that everyone we present is brilliant. Because if people come in and they're unprepared or they're completely off brief or whatever, it reflects badly on us. It means that we didn't do the job properly. So that goes, with the whole like in-person sessions. For me, it's always very important that people feel 100% comfortable and not stressed. And if they come in and I can see, the nerves are there and they're all like, the voice is not coming out and stuff, we always like, stop the camera, take a step out, bring someone else in, cool off for 5 minutes, let's do it again. I'm a big believer in anything you do that you should feel, at your most comfortable. Yes, challenged, creatively, but it needs to come from a place of feeling safe and comfortable and confident. So then you can take those risks and you can try those things out. But if you go in somewhere and you don't feel yourself, you're kind of, nervous, or the person on the other side is making you feel intimidated, then you're never gonna, you're not gonna stand a chance of like doing your best job.
Yeah.
Which I think people sometimes forget as well, that, auditioning is a part of your job. It could be, like 10 minutes of it, but there you are doing your thing. It also counts as
You're
acting.
acting. You're still acting. It's just the audience is 3 or 4 people, not.
Yeah. So yeah, and then I always used to, give my feedback and say who my favorite people were and what I thought and stuff. And sometimes you work with directors who every time they come back with their selects and their notes, you're like, yes, exactly right, 100% agree, we're in complete agreement, that's exactly it. Very often it happens that they come back with a list of selects and you're like, really? But there were much stronger people that we've seen.
Yeah.
And you then just kind of, gauge the situation, whether you're going to push for someone and be kind of like, how about so and so? And then, sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, let me give them another go. Yeah, they're good. Let's bring them back in. But it does happen on commercials, I would say. On films is different because your kind of working relationship with director and producer, it's longer. It takes a longer time. On commercials, we can turn it around all in a week sometimes. So it's very quick. Yeah, and sometimes it's something very arbitrary, as the ad agency creative who wrote the script had in mind that this person will have brown hair, and then that's kind of who gets picked. And it wasn't a requirement on the brief because it's something so silly and unimportant, but it's lots of different factors. And yeah, often you agree with those decisions and you're happy and you think, oh, the best person got the job. Other times, completely not who you thought was the best, who delivered the best performance, who gave the best read, who,
Yeah.
and you just roll with it. And you just kind of, remind yourself that your part of the process is this, and kind of what comes before and after you can't really affect that much. You can kind of do little tweaks, little suggestions, little questions, but ultimately, directors or, ad agencies, clients, brands, whoever, they decide what they want, and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. So you just have to, again, I guess, focus on what you can control as opposed to what you can't to
Yeah.
stay sane in this mad business.
But what tends to happen often is that, we'll see, and a lot of casting directors say that, and it is really the truth, is you'll see someone and you really like them and they don't get that job, but because you really like them, you remember them and you bring them for something else, or
Yeah.
for many something else's, and then eventually they get a thing because they're good and they deserve it, and because you spotted them way back when, and then you just kind of maintain that relationship. And that does often happen because that's just the nature of it, I guess. There'll be lots of brilliant people for every thing that you see on TV or in the cinema, whatever. I'm sure there was like 10 other actors who could have done just as brilliant of a job as the person who's actually cast in it. It just would have been different. And people on the team had their preference and they just end up with so and so.
Yeah. So there's, yeah,
Yeah.
as many members of the team, as many moving factors, because whoever gets a say in the casting, they all have their own vision.
Yeah. And the bigger the project, when you're working for I'm guessing, because we don't work for big studios as of yet, but having heard from people who do, and people who do stuff for the Netflix and whatever, that's all kind of decisions by committee. There's so many people in the process, and casting seems to be the thing that everyone gets most excited about and the thing that everyone has an opinion on, and then it's just lots of voices agreeing on so
Fair
it's
enough.
a lot of it's out of our hands, but it's kind of it's still fun to to kind of do that first filter, and to especially that's why we love doing shorts as well. You kind of get to work with director closely, and then there's no it's just about pleasing them, and then they're more likely to take your opinion on board, because it's just really the dialogue kind of between the two people as to what's needed and what do you think, and all rather than here are our options, and then you all over there, 20 of you, have a powwow and decide, and you come back with a decision. They're just
Yeah.
different processes.